Hey guys, good morning. It's Joyce at Medusa Was Framed here at Medusa Reads again for part 3 of Human Tuning. And I apologize for getting such a late start today. It's almost 1 o'clock. I got up this morning and with my coffee, I started working on editing the Jekyll Island presentation. Cheers. Those of you who have channels or edit videos know the producing of these videos, unless you just sit down and record something and upload it to YouTube, actually is a pretty time-intensive process. Um, if you're arranging effects and images and you record visual and audio separately, it takes a lot of time not to even take into consideration the research you have to do first. So anyway, long story short, I sat down with my coffee, got up to cut up a mango, and 4 hours had passed. So I like to do these in the morning. I didn't get to it. I'm sorry, I'm doing it now. So again, if you're just watching this for the first time, I am reading you this book, one chapter or one section at a time each day, introducing you to the world that I work in, the world of sound, vibration, and the world of plasma. I also have the front door open. I live right next to a busy boulevard, so I apologize if that's picked up. And I'm thirsty because it's hot in Florida, so I'm going to be taking a lot of sips. So let's see where we left off yesterday. Oh dear. I think we left off right here. Yes, we left off at sound and the 5 elements. So, the universal energy field, like a string dividing to create different tones, divides into 5 energy fields or elements known as ether, air, fire, water, and air. On a cosmic scale, each element symbolizes a universal principle or archetype. The 5 elements combine and mix in different ways, like musical tones, to generate currents of energy that sustain everything we know and experience, including our thoughts, emotions, and physical body. The ancient seers of India called the 5 elements Shabda, or the sacred sound currents. Dr. Randolph Stone, founder of polarity therapy, visualized the points in this 5-star pattern as element tones, which sound in varying intensities to create the music of life. He called the 5-star pattern nature's geometric keyboard. Let me grab Dr. Stone's book. It's just out of my reach. Sorry for the noise. I just put my earphones back in. And honestly, I haven't read this book in a couple years, so I was not prepared to have this ready to show you. But Dr. John Beaulieu, who wrote the book that I'm reading to you, was a student of Dr. Randolph Stone, who is noted for founding polarity therapy. He referenced him often. I should. Now, this would be a book to read. It would probably take me 6 months to read you this book, but maybe we'll read excerpts. Anyway, let's proceed. Nature's geometric keyboard. The existence of archetypal elements is recognized in the philosophical, religious, and healing traditions of many cultures. All speak of one primary energy that divides the steps down in currents of elemental energy. Dr. Vasant La describes the process of division from Ayurvedic medicine perspective. The Rishis perceived that in the beginning, the world existed in an unmanifested state of consciousness. From that state of unified consciousness, the subtle variations of the cosmic soundless sound, Om, manifested. From the vibrations, there first appeared the ether element. The ethereal element then began to move. Its subtle movements create the air, which is meant to begin. Oh, I lost my place there. This ethereal element then began to move. Its subtle movements create the air, which is ether in action. The movement of ether produced friction. Through friction, heat was produced. Particles of heat energy combine to form intense light, and from this light, the fire element is manifested. Thus, ether manifested into air. And it was the same ether that further manifested into fire. Through the heat of fire, certain ethereal elements dissolved and liquefied, manifesting the water element, and then solidified to form the molecules of earth. In this way, ether manifested into the four elements of air, fire, water, and earth. The element known also in Western traditions, Greek mythology, Greek philosophy was based on a doctrine of the elements. Man's four facilities, moral, fire, aesthetic and soul, water, intellectual, air, and physical, earth, were seen as expressions of the elements. Hippocrates, the father of Western medicine, based his healing on the four moods, or humors. He termed them phlegmatic, earth, choleric, water, sanguine, fire, and melancholic, air. The elements were rediscovered in the Middle Ages and the Renaissance by three distinguished scholars concerned with the music of the spheres. They were the Jesuit father Athanasius Kircher, the English Rosicrucian Robert Fludd, and the astronomer Johannes Kepler. Robert Fludd's world, Monochord, illustrates the relationship of the elements of sound and creation. Fritz Stiege explains the world monochord in music, magic, and mystery. The single-stringed measuring instrument with which aid Pythagoreans to work out the intervals is anchored to the earth, Terra. The latter corresponds to the gamma Graecian, the bottom note of the medieval note system. Above it lies intervals of a second and other elements, aqua, air, ignis, water, air, and fire, and thus, in fact, the whole material world. Cheers. See, my ice has melted. It's hot. The following chart shows ourselves in relationship to the elements. Oh, that chart is nothing new. Pretty standard chakra chart showing the relationship with the caduceus, the Ida and Pingala, the Sushumna, whatever you want to call it, it's all the same thing. At the center of the chart are three primary energy centers. These are illustrated as the ultrasonic core in the middle with two intertwined lines. Together, they form the symbol of the caduceus. The caduceus, or staff of Hermes, was the insignia of the ancient physicians of Egypt and Greece. Dr. Stone, the founder of polarity therapy, explains the meaning of the caduceus. The two serpents represent the mind principle in dual aspect. The fiery breath of the sun is the positive pole on the vital energy of the right side of the body. It is called yang in Chinese and Pingala by the Hindus. On the left side of the body flows the cooling energy of the moon essence of nature. It was called yin by the Chinese and Ida, current in India. excuse me. Although the caduceus remains the physician's symbol, its true energy meaning is not recognized by those practicing medicine today. The currents of the caduceus can be visualized as waves of energy that divide to create energy centers, element centers, or chakras. The term chakra comes from the Sanskrit word which means spinning wheel of energy. The chakras are symbolized in the diagram on the previous page by lotus flowers with decreasing numbers of petals, depicting a step down in vibration. In ancient drawings, the chakras were pictured as spinning wheels without symbolic embellishment. Balancing the 5 elements. There is no set formula for balancing the elements in a person. Element balancing is a mobile, ever-changing interaction of elements between the self, the external environment, and the cosmos. There is only our ability to participate with each element at the appropriate time. We get sick when element flexibility is lost. The image of a hang glider soaring through the sky is a good metaphor for understanding our relationship with the 5 elements. The hang glider pilot may appear to be effortlessly soaring. However, on closer examination, he's making thousands of adjustments in response to the changing wind currents. The hang glider pilot is paying attention to the wind currents because he knows if he does not adjust, he'll crash. When the currents change, the hang glider pilot goes on alert and immediately makes the correct adaptation. We see this as effortless soaring. However, for the pilot, effortlessness requires a lot of knowledge, dedicated training, practice, conditioning, and the right mindset to be able to glide effortlessly. Ideal element balance is obtained by our constant adaptation to the 5 elements. An element scale can help us better understand the relationship between the 5 element combinations and adaptation. Each element is assigned a minimum to maximum range of intensity from 1 to 10. Level 1 is the least intense, and level 10 is the most intense expression of the element. Our actions in normal reality must match the elemental currents, which are generating the event. For instance, going to the bank requires an element pattern of 8 earth, 4 water, 3 fire, and 1 air. Making a point with a bank officer requires a change to 6 earth, 3 water, 7 fire, and 2 air. Thanking the bank officer requires another change to 3 earth, 5 water, 4 air, 4 fire. The driving home requires 2 earth, 1 water, 9 fire, 7 air. Sometimes our actions do not align with the flow of the 5 elements. There's a samurai movie in which the main character is a warrior who commands his men at plus 10 fire. His voice is loud and staccato. He barks successful, fiery military commands on the battlefield, and he is highly respected by his men. Next, the movie shifts from a battlefield scene to his bamboo house where he is lying on a rice mattress with his geisha wife. They are playfully looking into each other's eyes. Water is plus 8 and rising. Suddenly he speaks to her in a totally inappropriate plus 10 fire battlefield voice as though he is still commanding his men. She lowers her head, and simultaneously a flower wilts as all the water is evaporated by his excess fire. The 5 elements are integral to both Western and Eastern healing traditions, and the need to adapt to changing life situations is very much a part of modern science. Dr. Hans Selye, who won the Nobel Prize, defines stress as adaptation to change. When we fail to adapt to a life change, we create increasing levels of distress in our lives. Those who adapt to change will experience the same stress as euphoric stress, or what science is called eustress. Imagine the hang glider soaring above the sky. The wind changes suddenly, and the flyer fails to adjust. An alarm immediately goes off in his body, called the biochemistry of stress. He could ignore the alarm. However, the alarm reaction will continue to escalate. It's like setting an alarm clock and trying not to listen to it in the morning. The samurai warrior was in eustress on the battlefield, something that might be distress for many, and in distress in the bedroom. It might seem funny, however. The samurai, from five element perspective, is an example of someone who needs to learn more about water element adaptation skills. Modern scientific theory and the five element theory are very similar. Both emphasize the importance of adaptation to change, and both have therapeutic approaches that help us adapt. In many instances, these approaches are one and the same. The difference lies only in the theory. Stress theory is based on reductionist science and life changes. For example, a therapist may ask you if you have recently lost a family member, changed jobs, bought a house, or gone on vacation. He then assigns a number value to the energy it takes you to adapt to each life change. The higher your score, the greater your stress level. The five element theory is more aligned with a systems approach, and the focus is on energy fields creating the dynamics of the life events. Both systems and reductionist approaches require the ability to observe and evaluate life events and associated behaviors. However, the five element approach requires an additional step of translating life events and behaviors into element patterns. Once the element pattern is understood, it becomes a basis for choosing methods to adapt to different energy patterns, as well as a resource to prepare for future changes. For the purpose of learning, each element is explored by itself. However, they are not always present in our lives in different combinations. Methods of evaluating and combining elements in order to create sessions are present in the chapter on Pythagorean tuning forks in the five elements. The following element protocols are designed to bring out the qualities of each element for training purposes. They will help you make and hear the sounds of the tuning forks associated with the element. Reading about the element and practicing the protocol is great preparation for creating more complex energy sessions. It's suggested that you visualize the color and feeling tone of the element before doing the protocol. The protocols can be done with knee taps or overtone taps. A knee tap means you strike the tuning fork on your knee to activate it, or overtone, you can hit them together. I think this is a lot here to read. So I think we'll just do ether today, and then we'll come back and do the rest tomorrow. And I don't think I grabbed the right tuning fork, but that's okay. You won't be able to really hear it through the phone anyway. So this is a system using the Pythagorean forks, which I don't have here on the desk with me, to get you in tune with the way the plasma and the ether moves around you, to feel that vibration, to hear that sound, for that sound to be something that you hear on your skin, which is how sound therapy really works. Sound therapy is not just about making noise. It's really about using all of your senses and your intuition to understand the conversation you're having. You strike a fork, it creates a movement, like throwing a rock in water. And then you listen with your ears, but you also listen with your skin and your nervous system to what that sound, that water, that vibration, that frequency interacts with. Sound therapy is not just about making noise. Silence and the spaces between sound is a very important part of sound therapy. And people who just bang gongs and play singing bowls with no real observation and awareness of the silence between the sounds honestly doesn't know what they're doing. They haven't been trained. They went and bought some bowls, and now they're trying to take your money with no skills. Anyway, let's read about ether. So ether is represented in the Pythagorean fork system with the C tone. C is your root chakra. And he specifies the C to G tuning forks, which in the solar harmonic set, the Pythagorean set, is the perfect fifth. Can I reach them from where I am? Let me see. My forks are right behind me. Actually, I could. They're right behind me. So this is the C and G, the perfect fifth. This is a set that you can purchase. And if you're going to start tuning forks for your own use, this is a great place to start. With the C and the G. Keywords here are vision and space. The color associated with this range is blue. The negative emotions associated with this range are grief, loss, remorse, and anguish. The positive are ecstasy, bliss, joy, and happiness. The tissue quality that you will find responding to ether on the negative scale will be flaccid, limp, dull, and loose. The positive side of the tissue quality will express elongation, be relaxed, soft but firm, resilient, and springy. The emotional profile on the negative side involves suffering loss, being lost, wandering without direction, while the positive side executes a vision, having a great sense of well-being, balance, space to make things happen, a feeling as everything is just right, celebration, and higher messages. The movement pattern is an open one. Ether is space. There are many different qualities of ether in our lives, represented by many different types of spaces. Each space has its own dimensions, with different activities taking place. The activities within the ether space are the four elements: air, fire, water, and earth, which are constantly mixing in different combinations. Sometimes we even call these activities mixers. We can create spaces for many different types of mixing. For example, we can create internal emotional spaces for happiness, sadness, anger, grief, joy, and peace. We can also create mental space for our thoughts. Sometimes we say, I just need some space to think this over, or would you just give me some space? We set out different spaces at different times in our lives. Sometimes we may feel the need for outdoor spaces, indoor spaces, open spaces, enclosed spaces, big spaces, or small spaces. We may seek a warm space or a cold space, a light or dark space, a different colored space. Sometimes we may need a quiet, peaceful place, or we may be attracted to a noisy, active, chaotic space. New Yorkers are always talking about their living spaces. When I first arrived in New York City in 1973 from Indiana, I looked for a space to live in. I looked at a small New York apartment and felt like I was going to suffocate. When I finally got out of the building, I started taking deep breaths. The real estate agent told me that people from my part of the country need more space. She took me to a downtown Manhattan and showed me loft spaces. I found one. It was not pretty, but it was big. In those days, to my surprise, no one wanted to live in a big space. All I knew was that I could breathe freely and feel relaxed in that open space. When I invited some of the hospital staff to my loft for a party, They had many different reactions to being in my big space. One nurse told me, "This space is so big, it scares me. Don't you get lost in here?" A psychiatrist told me, "I have never been in a space like this. My patients would freak out in here." My music therapy colleague, who grew up in Texas, understood my need for space. He let out a big holler and said, "Yes, this space is great." Space is everywhere in our lives. There are spaces within spaces. We are in the space of our room, which is the space of our house. Our house is the space of our property, and our property is the space of our town. Our town is the space of our country, and our country is the space of our state, which is the space of our country. Our country is the space of the world, which is the space of our solar system, which is the space of our universe, and so on. We're always changing and shifting spaces. It seems sometimes we are on an endless search for the right space. When we are tired of being in space of our room, we walk into another space in our house. We change our external space and then change our internal space. When we enter another room, our thoughts, emotions, and body shift. Writers are always looking for the perfect space to write. Painters need a space with great light to read and paint. Cowboys sing about wide open spaces. Changing spaces is a form of tuning ourselves. This is perhaps the reason why the ether element is associated with sound. When I was recording at Novessa Studios in Woodstock, we were in a soundproof room. The microphones were turned up all the way in order to record the subtle overtones of the tuning forks. When we listened to the recording, we could still hear a sound that was not coming from the tuning forks. I asked the engineer about the humming sound that was in the background. He told me that it was the sound of the space of the recording room. He told me that different recording rooms have different tones. Spaces within our own body are governed by the ether element. When the space between the joints in our body is too constricted or flaccid, a dissonance is created within our harmonic field. This creates a change in our thoughts, emotions, and physical body. For example, a compromised space being the joint of our first finger or the articulation in our cranium can leave an effect on the energy throughout our entire body. Yes, craniosacral work and lymphatic drainage are the realm I work in, and that's the juice of my body work. It's the subtlety of those spaces. By understanding and working with ether, we can become aware of the importance of space in our lives. For example, we can be stressed out and take a vacation in the Caribbean. We can leave the small space of our office and enter the open space of a beach. By working with ether, we can take actions that change our space in order to create a harmonic shift in the wave pattern of the other four elements. So I'm going to stop there today, simply because that was a lot to take in. Tomorrow we'll work in air. Again, using these two forks, but with different visions. So I'll leave you with that. Again, if you are interested in getting some tuning forks for yourself, and this is a great place to start, the Sacred Fifth. I have an affiliate account with Soma Energetics, which is a company that I have trained with. I've also trained with Dr. Jean Beaulieu, and Dr. Jean Beaulieu makes all of these forks in his company, different companies, including Elaine McCusack of Biofield Tuning, sell his forks just to their own specifications. I have an affiliate account with Soma Energetics. If you would be interested in a fork, I would certainly appreciate it if you would use the affiliate link I have below to check them out. That would be your way of thanking me for this video and the work that I do. So imagine your space. Get in touch with your space and what it means. From the space around you to the emotional space within you, down into those joint articulations. So thank you. We're going to wrap up part 3 of Human Tuning, and I'll see you tomorrow when we talk about air. Thanks, guys.